Hello and welcome to this Absolute Beginner's Blender tutorial number 13A. I'm A1 Serious. Let's get started with this. This tutorial is about assigning materials to mesh objects. We're using Blender 2.66a today, which is the latest release. Today is April 22nd, 2013. And before I start assigning materials to this object, I'll start the Screencast key display so you can see what I'm doing. I'm also pressing the Alt key and the left mouse button to navigate. That doesn't always show up here on the Screencast. So when this happens, that's what I'm doing. You can use the View menu to change your position, top, or I press the numpad 7. Does the same thing. When you have a mesh object, you will have a materials tab here, and you can open that up by clicking on it. And there's two ways to create a new material. You could either add an item in the list here and then press plus new. We'll remove that right now, and then or you can do this. You can just add a material here, and then it will take the latest active material and add an extension to it. It will just copy the data. And before we go into this, I would just like to collapse all the other options here, because it's only the diffuse and specular qualities that I would like to discuss. I'll change the color of this to blue. Change the name first here, or you can do that at any point. And then I can just pull up this slider, so you can slide. I'm just holding down my left mouse button like that, or you could do this and use that one, and this movement here is the same thing as rolling the mouse wheel. So that's how the color picker works. And you have diffuse shader models, several of them, and I'll just stick to this one. Same is true for the specular shader models. Before we move on, I would like to add a sphere. Shift A, mesh. Look at this here, like that. So these are the two objects that we have. Press 7 to look at this from the top. And as you can see, the sphere has no materials assigned to it. So I can add a new materials in it, assignment list, and then choose blue from this list. Look at this again and render that. And then you can see how this specularity is more obvious on it. Also, if I add a modifier to this object, subdivision surface modifier, and render it again, you can still see that there's a faceted look to it. So now we'll select this object here, choose its material tab, and then we have this blue material, and I can change the specularity of it. I can increase the intensity like that, and you can see on this preview how it gets brighter or more dim. So let's render that. You can see this very dim specularity. Let's turn that back by 0.5. And of course, changing the hardness. If you lower the hardness to 1 and render that, you can see how it bleeds out over the entire object. Let's put it up to 100. And it becomes something that looks a little bit harder. Turn it back to 50. I'll select the sphere and go into edit mode. Make sure everything is selected, and then I can change W. Use the specials menu, but I invoke that by pressing W, and then I go down to shade smooth, and then we can render that again. And then you can see that the faceted look is all gone, so there's no more facets when you have a smooth shader. We can go back to this modifier here and just remove it, and see that the shading is still, this object still looks smooth. It is sufficiently, the mesh is sufficiently dense here, it's fine enough to allow the smooth shader to create a smooth looking surface. And I'll leave that for now and then go over to this box, this cube, and go into edit mode and Control Tab, change to face selection and select this one face. We'll now start adding more materials to this object. So I'll open up one more item in the list, press new, and you can see that it just takes, since there was no active, I didn't have the blue selected, then it will take materials as its starting point, and I change this to red, and I'll just change the color to red, and I can assign that to this face, and then I would like to extrude more of this. And previously when I did that, you'd get a new, the entire extrusion would have the material of the selected face, but now it takes the material from the edges, change to edge mode, the edges that it's pulling it from. So that's a change in how this works. And now I selected the entire, this entire extension, and I assign that to this red material. So let's render that and see what that looks like. And the shadows are pretty harsh in this, so I would like to add, go into object mode, Shift A, and I add a lamp, an hemispherical lamp. Just pull that out so it's not going to be in the way when we're viewing this. It doesn't, this particular light, it doesn't matter really where it's positioned, and I want to change it down to 0.2 because otherwise you're going to get it too bright. It will just be the entire thing will be too bright. So you can see that it lightens up the shadows a little bit. That's an important thing when you work with materials, that your illumination will affect what the materials look like. So that's you kind of have to play with both the illumination and the materials. Shift A, no, sorry, Shift S. I want to put the cursor back to center here. And select this object and go to edit mode. And we're in face selection. And now if I have the red material as my selected or active material, and I press the plus key like that, so I add another, and I just leave that on. Or I could do this, I could remove that like that. Have to be in object mode, sorry. So if I add another material like that, I could do it either way. You can see what happens with the naming convention. We'll keep messing with this a little bit because this can be somewhat confusing. The fact that depending on if you have a material that is active and you then add a new material, then it will take it and replace the material in your materials list, the materials list for the object. So if we look at the materials list, which is the list of all the materials available in this file, you see that we have created all these new materials. So this is something that's important to keep track of. It just kind of happens, so to speak, to you when you do it, and you get the new material. It's just what happened with the old one, and that's what happens. So this, I really would like to have this, call this red, or what I really want here is the red material. I want the red to be assigned to this, like that. So I can take this material here and change it to yellow, and go in and change the diffuse color of it, like this. And then assign that to that face that was selected, extrude, and Alt Shift right mouse click and assign that. Then I press A to deselect everything, and let's just now select blue and press select. Then those faces are selected, and then press deselect and nothing is selected. I now selected this face and E for extrude, and I'm just pulling on this arrow here, and I'm selecting all of this, and then I add another slot here, and if I want to, I could take this material here, change it to green, and pull up that slider and that one down, and we'll look at that list. So now we have blue, green, red, and yellow assigned to this object here. Red 2 or red 0.002 and material are not assigned to anything. As you can see here also, I haven't assigned any green to any faces yet, so it's not used, it's just assigned. Or it's used in the sense that it has a user because this object has it in its list, but it's not, utilized, put it that way. I can assign this material to these faces. We can look at that through the camera, or it's just render it. That's what that looks like. So now we have several materials assigned to this object. I press tab to go into object mode, and we can move that over, and we'll look at this sphere here instead, and it has only blue assigned to it. So let's then open up another item in the list here, and I'll select this one here, red 0.002, and I change the name to purple. Look at the list again, then that's called purple. So you can change the name of an existing material in the list, and also now you can see that this material is now assigned to something. It still has the same properties as before. It's not purple, it's red, but I can of course change it. So if I'm changing that now, deep purple, like that. So we'll look at the list here now. The only material that doesn't have an assignment is this one here. Let's create one more material. Call it test. As you can see, purple is still there. It's just using the latest active, just adding another extension to it, and you can do whatever you want to it. So we'll just kind of do this, you know, some random color. So now we created a new material, and I remove that in the list, and then you can see the test has no users. So if I change that, if I select that, then that will be the material that is selected for that object. But that's not the one I want for this. I want the sphere to be, let's say, green. But before I change anything, I'll press the F key here, or the F icon, and that means that now test has a fake user. In other words, it has a user that will allow it to be saved when I save the file. I still want to use, did I say green? I say green. So now we look at this. It has green. This one here has blue, red, yellow, and green. And if we look at the list here, we can see that material has no assignment, purple has no assignment, test has an assignment, has a fake user. So if I save this, then material and purple would go away. So let's save this file. Press F12, and I've saved this before, but I'll save it as untitled1. So I'll just press plus to get a new file name. Then I open up a new file. Like this, where there are only this material here, so it's a different file. And I open up the recent untitled 1 blend, and here that one is. And now we can see here that blue, green, red, and yellow remains, and test, but material and purple is gone. So that's how materials are, you know, saved. They're saved if they have an assignment to an object or if they have a fake user. So before we end this, I'd like to move this over here, this one there a little bit, see what we can, and I'll grab the camera by right mouse clicking on its frame and then G, and then I can grab it and we can render that. And now the last thing we'll do here is to look at what happens when you change the shading of it, the object. So to do that, the first thing I would like to do is to add a modifier, a subdivision surface modifier, and that's what's happened to an object if you don't have, if you haven't shored up the edges, so to speak. You can do that. I can press Ctrl R here, and that to refine the mesh, and you can see how you can gradually, you know, make sure that the edges stay sharp. But that's not what I want in this case. I just want to demonstrate that this is all intentional. So here you have this object, and if we render this like this, you get this faceted look. Select everything here and change it to shade smooth, and then render it again, and then you get a smooth render. And you can increase this count here, so that, and you can increase that, then you can see both in the view and the render that it has a finer mesh, and then the edginess is going away. Also, if you'd like to, you could select sections of this and say shade flat on those, and then we render that, and some of the sections are rendered flat and some smooth. So I think that's all the possibilities I would like to cover at this point. Let's open up the materials tab and just review this real quickly. This here is the list of materials available for the particular object that is selected, and this list here is the list of all the materials available in this file, this archive, this what you're working on. And remember to, when you create a new material, or let's say you have this selected and then you decide to create a new material, then when you plus there, then you get a changed name. Maybe you go in and do this beige, and give it kind of a beige look, and then you've changed this blue to beige. Maybe you weren't intending for all the blue things to change, so keep in mind that when you use one of these say items in the list, then make sure you actually put that color back in its place where it was. So now we have this beige here, and we can add that and use it for whatever. So that's something to keep in mind, that when you do create a new material, depending on what material is active, it will be replaced in the list of materials assigned. So I hope this helps you to start using materials, and that's a lot of fun. So I wish you the best of fortune with it, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.